What we're reviewing, Fairport Convention.
Fairport Convention.
Liege and Leif.
Yes.
This is a Patreon request.
Yep, it is another Patreon request. I think we have now got to the end of the Patreon requests. Or was there a new one? I can't remember.
I can't remember now.
I think this is the last one. Then next week there's something else that's interesting. Yeah. What's a leaf? Other than a leaf.
I don't know. It's like ancient. I bet it's like Shakespeare language.
Yeah. Maybe it's the opposite of a liege.
Ooh, leaf. As happily as gladly. That's an adverb. Archaic.
So you would say, yes, my liege, Leif. Yeah, so Fairport Convention. I mean, it's definitely a band that is in our trajectory, and it is a one we should know. It's one I should have albums of and don't have albums of. This is going to be a Wikipedia jobby. I don't really know the facts other than what I read on Wikipedia. So no one will say, you just got all this from Wikipedia. They only say that when I didn't. And then I say, well, what did I get wrong? And then there's silence. Yeah. I like folk music and I like rock music. Hence, I will enjoy this. It's probably one of those things where rock people think it's folk and folk people think it's rock. It's their fourth album. They made two just in 1969. Still with Sandy Denny on vocals. Produced by Joe Boyd, which I thought was very cool. Lots of strings on stuff in a folky way. So it's actually fiddle and viola, not violin. So that makes it more folk. It's very folk. There's a new, which is actually a new addition to the lineup. So they got that the fiddly guy in specifically for this album because this is actually a new direction effectively. This is their difficult second album, which is their fourth album. You know, we know Richard Thompson is like the main man. We know him. I know his name. I know him from guitar magazines in the 90s. It's all about Sandy Denny's voice, obviously. Of course it is. And I can hear the influence on Led Zeppelin, but particularly Plant's later solo stuff when he stopped being terrible in the 80s. We managed to get how far into the review, a few seconds into the review, without mentioning Led Zeppelin. Never mind. Yeah, this is a hugely influential album. It's great. I really like this. Don't know what to compare it to. Lady in Black by Uriah Heep is exactly like Matty Groves. I think they just took that and made their own song. You could compare it to Stand Up by Jethro Tull. So when Jethro Tull went folk full for the first time, kind of thing. And this is more folky than that to me. There's much less guitar, electric guitar and riffy stuff, except for the penultimate song, really, and the vocals. Ian Anderson is putting on an affected voice. It's an impression, isn't it, with Ian Anderson? It's like a character. This feels authentic. It's real folk, coming from someone who doesn't really know anything about folk. Tam Lin is the name of that song. That really does sound like Tull because there's much more guitar and riffiness. It's certainly what people. It might be where what folk sounds like comes from. This album, I would think, from the sounds of things, and obviously that's not going to be accurate because what's folk? Folk is such a broad concept, isn't it? This is an album with no filler. It's all great. It has a clear intent and it works very well. And I didn't buy the album.
You didn't buy it?
No. But
Why not?
wasn't there? I think we had a look and it wasn't very available, which surprises me a bit. Even the Spotify thing has the picture and it has the deluxe edition by whoever that is that does that, EMI or whoever it is.
I think there's been a reissue, hasn't there, or something quite recently?
Yeah, but I couldn't find it. Don't know.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, interesting sort of thing going on here. This is sort of like considered like major, isn't it? It's sort of like it's a hybrid of sort of. Is it a hybrid of rock and folk? It's something different from that. I think that there was a definite sort of almost like a manifesto to this. They're trying to do to English folk it's what was happening on like Americana stuff,
Yeah.
the West Coast America.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Sort of like a revival and modernise it, and their experience of folk was quite stuffy in the sense that people who are into folk were very, very particular about things, and they would react quite negatively to people just putting something out there and not almost attributing it properly or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And they were trying to sort of come up with something that was modern, yet draws on like hundreds of years of English folk music, basically.
English and Scottish. I think this particular one, I think these are all English, specifically.
Yeah, I think it was more specifically English, because they found that sort of like Wales and Scotland and Ireland in particular managed to keep their folk traditions alive.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas in England, it's still not really something that's done. Now, is if that sounds interesting to you, then this is obviously going to be right up your street.
Yeah.
I personally found the previous album a little bit better. On Half-Bricking.
Yeah.
Now, there's a track on there, A Sailor's Life, I think it's called, which set the blueprint for this, which is quite a long track, and it is a very good track. And I think they sort of found there's something we can do with this here.
Yeah.
Especially with Sandy Denny, who's got a very voice, and it is an awesome voice. It is one of those. She's almost like a siren. You just fall in love with that voice.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time this week listening to all the other stuff, all the solo stuff, and not actually listening to Fairport Convention.
Strange.
Mm-hmm.
I think she didn't actually. I don't think she put much weight in this. This was her last album with the.
Yeah, she left after this.
Wasn't it?
This was what she sort of came in to do, and then that, but wanted more control or something.
Maybe I think it's more sort of like this. This seemed quite. I think for the other members of the band, this was quite new, and they were going down to an avenue which was interesting and sort of wide open for them. Whereas she'd spent a lot of time in folk, and it was sort of maybe it was just a little bit like, well, I've done folk now. I want to do something else. It's amazing. I mean, you didn't mention the sort of. I don't know how it feeds into it really, but I mean they say it did. There was a bit of a tragedy around the band where the reason they got new members is because there was a car crash.
Yeah.
And they lost a couple of members.
Yeah. It was the drummer.
Yeah, the drummer. I mean, you said they did two. I thought it was 3 albums they did in 1 year, which is an amazing feat. But when you consider the sort of like it's a year in which they've been involved with an accident like that, it's pretty amazing, you know.
Yeah, this must be very soon. This was recorded in the summer of 69, 68.
It's crazy, isn't it? You just think, flipping it. So, I mean, context-wise, there are interesting things going on here. And actually, when I first put it on, Sandy Denny's voice drew me straight in, obviously. I thought, I like this. Never really considering myself a big fan of folk. But suddenly I felt, actually, no, I something I like about this. But I did find I got bored.
Right. That's interesting.
I got bored about 2/3 of the way through.
So you preferred the previous one?
I preferred the previous one, and I could listen to that all the way through, and I was like, actually, this is pretty cool.
Because I mean, this is a focused album, isn't it? This is a whole album of that one thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the previous album, there's all the American stuff on there as well.
Yeah. So maybe it's just a thing that I'm not that much into folk, and once the novelty, it's a very short-lived novelty for me. Because I don't think this. I mean, although they say this is sort of like a quite an important album, it created something new. I can't think, as you say, much more like it. I mean,
I think it's hugely influential on rock music. I wouldn't know if it's influential on folk music. It probably kind of isn't, because the folk people would see it as that was the
folk rock experiment.
the window in that brought people in. So it's the commercial one. I would imagine. Voted the most important folk album of all time by Only Two.
You do wonder. I mean, why don't you hear more folk or folk-inspired songs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, now we don't get. We just people listen to what they want. You choose. And there's plenty of folk podcasts and radio shows, but they're not on our radio, are they? So
no, why not? That's wow.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's not that. It's just we've never really come into contact with it. I don't think.
Yeah.
And it is strange. Why don't we, at a time when our history or a robust discussion about our history is occurring in the news.
Is it? I don't think it is.
It seems quite robust.
It's true. It's true. Everyone gets their history from statues now, doesn't it?
This is our forgotten history. Yeah.
Yeah. These great songs. And that's what they're doing. They're saying, look, this is like 200 years. It's been refined over all these years, and it's it was one of those lightning in a bottle things where for them that was the moment.
So maybe we should forget having fights over statues, and maybe we should start digging out some classic folk songs.
Yeah.
And start a bit of a movement to get it taught in school. Maybe, I don't know. Do they still sing like hymns in school?
No.
Did we sing hymns?
Yes.
No, we did the Beatles.
We sung hymns. Yeah, but I think we had very progressive schools when we were young, and then as we progressed through the schools, they got more old-fashioned. So I think whenever we sung, I think there were a bit of hymns in high school, which by that time was utterly ridiculous. They were just religious songs, the traditional. But I think in Church Hill there was quite a mixture.
I'm sure we did Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds in Church Hill.
Probably, yeah. And I mean, you went to a different first school to me, didn't you? But certainly at Ravensbank, I bet Moonsmoke were the same. There was a whole load of songs that we sung. I remember the teachers holding up the words on big bits of paper like this. Sometimes I think maybe there was two teachers holding up because there was no projector. There was no way of putting the words up.
I remember actually in first school we just learnt the songs by singing with everyone else.
Yeah. And
so you just memorise the songs, sort of thing.
I'm sure they're still there somewhere in our minds. Yeah. And I wish I could remember what they were. There was one about an umbrella salesman, which we sung. I don't know anything else. I remember singing the Wurzels, but that was my suggestion when we had to perform a song, and I did the Muck Spreader song. Oh, which wasn't the Wurzels. I thought it was the Wurzels for years. It's not. Fling it here, fling it there. If you're standing nearby, you'll get your share. The Muck Spreader song. It was great. And that was Mr. The really angry teacher from Year 8. I think he was your teacher.
Well, Mr. Sturdy.
No. Yeah.
And what was it? Mr. Ward.
Mr. Ward. Yeah, it was Mr. Ward. Yeah. And then he picked up on that and got us all to sing it. There was a lot of things like that. I mean, at that point, this is 80s and early 90s, so they're all hippies, aren't they? All the teachers are actually hippies. Yeah. So that's what we were singing. But there was also
Mr. Ward wasn't a hippie.
No, he was a very angry man.
He was a class A arsehole, basically.
Yeah. It was one of those ones where you think, why was he there? Why was he doing it? He was just very cross. Didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything. He was just cross. Angry man.
So you want to go to the toilet, do you?
Why do you want to go to the toilet?
I see you went to the toilet 2 hours ago. How much have you been drinking?
Why? What did I do? Carry on colouring in this picture of a canal boat. A lot of stuff. I mean, the young ones with the crop rotation in the 14th century, we knew what crop rotation was.
Yeah.
We knew nothing else about the world, but we knew what crop rotation was, and we coloured in lots of fields. So it definitely hooked people into folk. It got more folk into folk. More into folks. You know, it's and I think that's why people. I think, to me, that's what folk music sounds like. But I suspect that's this album. I think that's how influential, isn't it? I really hear a lot of influence in rock music. You think about the and sort of fairly recent Robert Plant solo stuff, and you realise actually he just likes Fairport Convention and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, and we've talked about obviously the previous album. There's Bob Dylan songs on there. I think at that point hadn't been released by Bob Dylan.
I mean that's quite because it was in French, wasn't it? Let's have a look.
Was it French? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's what's it called? Si tu dois partir.
Oh.
So it was a Bob Dylan song in French.
In French.
So it sounds quite proggy to me.
So did Bob Dylan write it in French?
No.
So it's translated
it to French, yeah.
So did Fairport Convention translate it?
Yeah, I think so. They must have done.
Okay, I don't get that.
I'm sure that's right. Si tu dois partir.
But you can see why, because that's what they were doing. That's what Joni Mitchell and whoever. That's effectively what they were doing, weren't they? They were bringing back the folk, the traditions. So I think it was Sandy Denny though that pushed it in that direction, and that's why they made this album, of doing an album of it, which is now what they're known for. But yeah, I think it was excellent. The original singer was Judy Dibble, who I don't think is on the first album at all. I think it's before they actually recorded but she sung the original "I Talk to the Wind" with Giles and Fripp.
Oh right.
The other thing is this album definitely influenced the ex-members of the Yardbirds, who formed Renaissance. I think it's this album actually. If you look at the timing of it, it's just at the end of the Yardbirds. We mentioned Led Zeppelin again. So there you go. Folk, it's Led Zeppelin, isn't it? It's like Led Zeppelin 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's folk. You know, before I'd heard Carole King, I thought this is what it sounded like.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that strange? I don't know why. Because I knew Tapestry was a thing in all the lists of albums.
Yeah.
And then when I heard it, it's like, oh, this is like American stuff. What's this? It's a different band. Yeah, okay, for me it's 5 eggs.
Oh wow, that's quite high. That is.
That's like a personal thing. It's like I like it. It's good.
Yeah. It's a 3-egger for me.
Mm-hmm.
Controversial. Normally we're within 1 egg of each other.
That's true.
There's quite a split on this one.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't you didn't like it. It's too much of the one thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, also the context of its writing is slightly more interesting than the album itself. Mm-hmm. So, although context can help make an album good, not in this case.
Well, I had the opposite impression in that I really thought this was fantastic, and then when read about it, oh, that's why. Because they said about it was like it was a magical time. You'd hear these songs that were so old in the room.
So in my mind, if you like something, that's 4 eggs, and then if you find something in the backstory that explains it, I think that's enough to nudge it up another egg to 5 eggs. Mm-hmm. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I found out why I like it.
Yeah, it makes sense. It fits.
We like tradition.
It fits with my sense of self.
I'm defined by this.
Tick. Add that to my Facebook profile, Fairport Convention.
This is my music. I've always hated that. I'm listening to my music. You're not on that recording. We have completed the review of Liege and Leif. Fairport Convention.
What are we going to do next week, Kev?
I think are we on to bad news? I think we're on to bad news.
We are.
Yeah, so we're going to do a trio of what are they called? Mock rockumentaries.
Yeah.
The mock rockumentary thing, the Spinal Tappy thing. We're starting with bad news.
A lot of people won't know what that is.
Exactly. That's good.
Yeah.